What if some of the most useful inventions in our daily lives were never actually planned? What if a mistake, a failed experiment, or a completely unexpected accident could change the world forever? Throughout history, inventors have spent years searching for new ideas. But sometimes, the greatest discoveries happen when everything goes wrong. In this video, we're going to explore some of the most fascinating inventions that were discovered by accident. And our first story begins with an unexpected experiment that changed the way people cook around the world. The story of the microwave oven. In the 1940s, engineer Percy Spencer was working with a device called a magnetron. The magnetron was an important part of radar technology, and Spencer was experimenting with it during World War II. But one day, something completely unexpected happened. While Spencer was working near the equipment, he noticed that a chocolate bar he had with him had started to melt. At first, it might have seemed like nothing more than a strange coincidence. But Spencer was curious. Instead of ignoring what happened, he began investigating. He wondered if the energy produced by the magnetron had somehow caused the chocolate to heat up. That simple observation would eventually lead to an invention that changed kitchens around the world: the microwave oven. After noticing the melted chocolate, Spencer decided to investigate further. He placed different types of food near the magnetron and watched carefully to see what would happen. The results were surprising. The food began heating much faster than he expected. Spencer realized that the magnetron was producing energy that could heat food, but he still needed to understand whether this discovery could actually become a practical invention. So he continued experimenting. What started as an unexpected observation was becoming a serious scientific idea. Instead of simply using radar technology to detect objects, Spencer realized that the same technology might have another incredible purpose. It could potentially cook food, and that idea was about to change the future of the kitchen forever. Spencer's experiments showed that this technology could do much more than help with radar. The next challenge was turning the discovery into a machine that could actually be used to heat food. The first microwave oven was very different from the compact appliances we know today. It was enormous, heavy, and extremely expensive. The early machine stood several feet tall and weighed hundreds of pounds. It was not something you could simply place on a kitchen counter. At first, microwave technology was mainly considered for commercial and industrial use, but the basic idea had been proven. Energy from a magnetron could heat food remarkably quickly. And what began with a melted piece of chocolate had become the foundation of an entirely new way of cooking. The microwave oven was no longer just an unexpected experiment. It was becoming a real invention. As the technology developed, people began to imagine a future where cooking could become much faster. Instead of waiting for an oven to heat up, food could potentially be warmed in a fraction of the time. But there was still a major problem. The early microwave ovens were far too large and expensive for ordinary homes. Companies had to find ways to make the technology smaller, safer, and more practical. Over the following years, microwave ovens gradually became more accessible. Eventually, smaller models began appearing in homes. What had started as an accidental observation inside a laboratory was now becoming a completely new kitchen technology. And the story of the microwave teaches us something important. Sometimes an invention doesn't begin with a brilliant plan. Sometimes it begins with someone noticing something strange and being curious enough to ask, why did that happen? As microwave ovens became smaller and more affordable, they slowly began entering ordinary homes. People discovered that meals could be heated in minutes instead of waiting for a traditional oven. Leftovers could be warmed quickly. Frozen foods could be prepared more conveniently. And busy families suddenly had a completely different way to handle everyday cooking. The microwave didn't replace traditional ovens, but it changed what people expected from their kitchens. Today, millions of people use microwave technology without thinking about its unusual beginning. But every time someone presses that start button, they're using technology that traces its origins back to a surprising observation in a laboratory. A simple melted chocolate bar helped spark an idea that eventually transformed modern cooking. And that is what makes accidental discoveries so fascinating. The person who notices something unexpected may not realize it at first, but that tiny moment can sometimes become the beginning of something much bigger. Today, the microwave oven is so common that it is easy to forget how unusual the original idea really was. What began with radar research eventually became a familiar appliance found in kitchens around the world. The journey from a huge laboratory machine to a compact household appliance took years of engineering and development. But the most important moment happened much earlier. It happened when Percy Spencer noticed that something unexpected had happened to a chocolate bar near a magnetron. He could have ignored it. He could have simply cleaned up the melted chocolate and continued working. Instead, he became curious. That curiosity led to experiments. The experiments led to an idea, and that idea eventually became a technology used by millions of people. The microwave is a perfect example of how science can move forward in unexpected ways. And our next accidental discovery has an equally surprising story. Our next accidental invention started with something that seemed like a failure. In the late 1960s, a scientist at 3M was trying to create a very strong adhesive. The goal was simple: make a glue that could hold things together firmly. But the experiment did not produce the result he wanted. Instead, he created an adhesive that was surprisingly weak. It could stick to a surface, but it could also be removed without leaving much residue. At first, that might have looked like a useless invention. After all, why would anyone want a glue that wasn't very strong? But sometimes, a failed experiment can become valuable when you look at it from a completely different angle. And that's exactly what happened with this unusual adhesive. Years later, another 3M employee realized that this weak glue might actually solve a completely different problem. That idea would eventually lead to one of the most recognizable office products in the world, the Post-it note. The weak adhesive had a very unusual advantage. It could stick to a surface, but it could also be peeled away and used again. That made it perfect for marking pages without damaging them. A simple idea began to take shape. What if this unusual adhesive could be combined with small pieces of paper? The result would be a note that could stick almost anywhere, but could also be removed easily. It was completely different from traditional glue. You could write a reminder, attach it to a page, move it to another location, and remove it when you no longer needed it. At first, the idea did not immediately become a huge success. But once people began discovering how useful these little notes could be, everything changed. A glue that was originally considered a failure had found its purpose. And sometimes finding the right purpose is all an invention needs. Once people discovered how useful the removable notes were, their popularity began to grow. They could be used for reminders, organizing ideas, marking important pages, leaving messages, and planning projects. The simple design made them incredibly versatile. You didn't need a special tool or complicated technology. Just write something down, stick it somewhere visible, and remove it when you're finished. What makes the story even more interesting is that the original adhesive was never intended to create a revolutionary office product. It was considered too weak for its original purpose, but that weakness turned out to be its greatest strength. The story of the Post-it note shows us that a failed invention isn't always a failure. Sometimes the problem isn't the invention itself. Sometimes the real challenge is discovering what the invention is actually good for. And our next accidental invention began with something much more delicious: a potato.